She enters the room as if the place were too small for the energy she carries. Eyes turn, not just because of her appearance, but because of the way she behaves, as if she needs no one. Independent, decisive, unattainable. She doesn't ask permission. She occupies space. And that's magnetic. You feel an admiration disguised as desire, but also a silent pang of warning. Something there is too strong to be just charm. It's a raw force, unpredictable, like a perfume that attracts you, but also warns you, be careful. This stings. In recent years, the word freedom has been hijacked. What should be an emotional and spiritual conquest has become an excuse for indifference, reckless hedonism, and escape from emotional responsibility. And within this new code, a type of woman emerges whose banner of freedom actually hides a contempt for the rules of the intimate game. She talks about empowerment, but what she practices is emotional isolation. She claims to be in control of herself, but deep down she's terrified of being read in depth. She talks about independence, but lives surrounded by external validation. And here's the paradox. She shouts that no one has power over her, and yet she always needs to be in control. It's easy to confuse this archetype with the strong, confident woman. But while the strong woman knows what she wants and chooses to connect responsibly, this masked version of freedom builds walls, not bridges. She avoids deep bonds, but demands devotion. She rejects labels, but gets annoyed if you don't treat her as a priority. She says she doesn't need anyone, but sabotages any man who has the emotional maturity to truly stay. And that's where the risk lies. This type of woman doesn't cheat on impulse. She cheats philosophically. And this brings us to the central point. The betrayal in this case doesn't happen when she sleeps with someone else. The betrayal happens before, the moment she believes she no longer owes you anything. It's subtle, almost imperceptible. It begins with small omissions, free actions that violate unspoken agreements. Then it evolves into distancing, jealousy tests, ambiguous behaviors. And when you finally realize she's betrayed you, she's already constructed a narrative in which you are the controller, the insecure one, the problem. Because for her, feeling free is more important than being loyal. This is the type of woman who romanticizes the idea of having multiple suitors, as if it were a trophy of personal value. She maintains contact with exes, has close friends you've never met, and tends to nurture parallel connections with an innocent smile on her lips. When questioned, she claims to be transparent. But what she really is unattainable. Because you never know where she is emotionally. You never know if what she feels is real or just convenient. There's a stark difference between a truly free woman and an emotionally unavailable one. The free woman chooses to love consciously. She doesn't need shackles to remain. The unavailable woman, however, hides behind freedom because she's terrified of surrendering. She transforms any attempt at closeness into a threat to her autonomy. And here lies the most dangerous contradiction. She desires to be loved deeply, but fears being truly seen. This woman will seduce you not only with her body, but with her words. She talks about evolution, free spirit, energy, but avoids any conversation about commitment with the same fervor with which she flees from a label. She wants to connect, but only if the connection has no consequences. She wants intensity, as long as she can leave at any moment without justification. She's the queen of let's see what happens, of let it flow. Until it flows too much and she disappears without warning. And when you try to understand what happened, she accuses you of attachment. As if the mistake were yours for wanting something clearer. Deep down, this woman has unresolved trauma related to the idea of belonging. Something within her associates stability with imprisonment. She has probably been controlled by someone, or grew up witnessing relationships based on possession and manipulation. And because of this, she swears to herself that she will never be limited by anyone. The problem is that, in protecting herself from pain, she also shields herself from love. She transforms relationships into veiled competitions of autonomy. Every time you give in, she withdraws. Every time you try to get closer, she activates the rhetoric of independence. It's an impossible balancing act. You need to show interest without seeming needy, care without being intrusive, nurture without seeming controlling. And even then, you will be constantly tested. Because this woman is always on the edge between attraction to connection and panic about commitment. She may not physically betray you immediately, but her infidelity begins when she stops caring about the emotional boundaries that underpin trust. And the truth is, this type of woman doesn't betray out of weakness. She betrays by choice. Because for her, keeping all doors open is an affirmation of power, a way to ensure she will never be a prisoner of love. And that's tragic, because every time she chooses freedom over connection, she also distances herself from herself. There's a loneliness that doesn't scream. She parades around with inflated self-esteem, collects invitations, dominates conversations, but feels an emptiness that is never filled. Because freedom without direction is just escape, and power without commitment is self-deception. This woman is the prisoner of the empire she built. An empire where no one is trustworthy, where every man is a potential threat, and where sincere affection is mistaken for weakness. And you, man who gets involved with her, need to know, no matter how much you prove your worth, she will always find an emotional or philosophical justification for not fully committing. She may even say she loves you, but she won't hesitate to walk out the door if at any point she feels her freedom is being compromised. And at that point, love becomes disposable, and fidelity, optional. The tragedy of this profile lies in the fact that it self-sabotages, because every attempt to love deeply is seen as a threat, and every relationship with growth potential becomes an emotional minefield. In the end, she doesn't cheat because she's bad. She cheats because she was hurt, and instead of healing, she decided to arm herself. The problem is that every emotional weapon one day backfires. True freedom doesn't require betrayal. It requires awareness, responsibility, clarity. The truly free woman is the one who knows how to say yes with depth and no with elegance. But as long as this difference isn't understood, many men will continue to confuse seduction with maturity and end up emotionally destroyed by a woman who never really wanted to stay. And that's exactly the danger. She never promises loyalty, but you project that onto her. And that projection is the perfect breeding ground for self-deception. When she betrays you, she doesn't break an agreement with you. She breaks the character you created for her. And that's why it hurts so much. The question remains, how many times have you confused freedom with coldness? How many times have you ignored the signs because you confused detachment with emotional strength? Perhaps what you saw as independence was just a disguised cry from someone who never learned to trust. But if the betrayal of this type stems from the fear of commitment, the next type of woman betrays for something even more enigmatic: the search for attention under the guise of fragility. And this is where the trap becomes even more dangerous. She doesn't enter with arrogance, she enters with fragility. Downcast eyes, a shy smile, broken stories from a painful past. Unlike the woman who asserts herself through excessive independence, she wins you over through the opposite, through neediness, by making you feel like the first to treat her with dignity. And then, without realizing it, you become the hero of her narrative. But the problem is that in this script, every hero is disposable as soon as they stop saving. In the beginning, she's sweet. She opens her soul too quickly. She tells you that all her exes were toxic, that she was betrayed, manipulated, devalued. She speaks with teary eyes, as if reliving everything right there in front of you. You, as a man, feel the ancestral call to protection. You're proud to be different from those who hurt her. You feel you have something special because she chose you to trust. But what you don't see is that you're being co-opted by a rehearsed script, not because she's bad, but because she learned early on that being a victim is safer than being responsible. This woman possesses a rare skill. She seduces you with pain, and that's powerful, because empathy is one of the quickest paths to connection. When someone shows vulnerability, our brains lower their defenses. Logic gives way to affection. But with her, this vulnerability isn't a bridge, it's a trap. Right from the first few dates, you start noticing strange patterns. She's extremely sensitive to any disagreement. She cries easily. She accuses you of acting like her ex when you set a boundary. She says you're pressuring her when you just want to better understand what she's feeling. Little by little, you stop confronting her. You weigh your words, you walk on eggshells, because you don't want to hurt her, because you feel that a poorly worded comment could reopen old wounds. But what you don't realize is that, little by little, you're giving up your truth to maintain peace. A fragile peace made of the silence of your desires. She places herself at the emotional center of the relationship. Everything revolves around how she feels, and when you start to question her, she masterfully activates the victim script. I knew you were going to treat me like this. Everyone ends up hurting me. You're just like everyone else. And you, even without having done anything serious, feel guilty. You try harder. You sacrifice yourself. And without noticing, you enter a spiral where your self-esteem is used as fuel to keep alive a narrative that always ends with her as the wronged one. The philosopher Ortega y Gasset said that to love is to surrender, but that this surrender is only real when there is fascination and surrender. In the case of the perfect victim, the surrender she provokes doesn't come from fascination, it comes from pity. And here's the most brutal point. She makes you feel indispensable until she no longer needs you. Because what she wanted, from the beginning, wasn't a bond, but relief. Relief for an inner void that isn't filled with love, it feeds on it. And when she feels you're no longer satisfying that hunger, she'll look for it elsewhere. Because for her, attention is healing, and attention is addictive. The betrayal in this case isn't for adventure nor for independence. It's for chronic neediness, for emotional validation, for the need to feel desired, special, seen. And since she doesn't believe she can maintain that in stable relationships, she seeks in the forbidden, in the secret, in fantasy, the nourishment that daily life doesn't provide. And then you discover ambiguous messages with someone from the past, deleted DMs, casual encounters with people she said she'd gotten over. You confront her, and she cries, and says she felt alone, ignored, that she only did it because you changed. And the betrayal becomes your fault. This woman is an expert at reversing roles. She transforms any action of yours into an argument to justify her own mistakes. And when she can't defend herself, she resorts to desperation. She threatens to disappear, to vanish, says it's not worth living in a world where nobody understands her. And you, even furious, back down, because she feels she's dealing with someone broken. And again, the cycle repeats. You forgive, you try to understand, but you're never understood in return. The cruelest part is that this archetype isn't obvious. Unlike the woman who cheats for power, this one hides the betrayal under layers of pain. She herself believes she's being wronged. And so she acts as if she has an emotional license to hurt. She doesn't want to destroy you, but she wants to save herself. And if that requires lying, manipulating, or portraying you as the villain, she will do it. Freud, in studying defense mechanisms, said that human beings tend to repeat unresolved patterns. The perfect victim is a living example of this. She gets involved with good men, but unconsciously sabotages them to recreate the abandonment she knows. Because it is in pain that she feels safe. Because true happiness is something she doesn't know how to sustain. So, even having what she says she wants, a healthy relationship, she begins to sabotage, to test, to push you into the role of the oppressor, so that she can feel wronged again. And the most dangerous part, she makes you doubt yourself. Because in the midst of emotional manipulation, there are real tears, real traumas, stories of pain that actually happened. And then, you hesitate to confront. You think, am I being too harsh? Doesn't she deserve understanding? But the truth is that you are being entangled in a narrative where suffering is currency and affection is a bargaining chip. She doesn't want connection. She wants compensation. And this transforms any relationship into a field of guilt. You never do enough. You're never sensitive enough. You're never present in the right way. And when you try to assert yourself, she plays the vulnerability card. And the equation is simple. If you give in, she disrespects you. If you confront her, she plays the victim. There's no way out. And then comes the final blow. One day, out of nowhere, she vanishes, disappears. Disappears from social media, stops responding, goes silent. And you feel something is wrong. You find out days later that she's reappeared with someone else. And once again, the discourse is the same. You left me alone. He treated me the way you didn't know how to treat me. And there she is, starting the same cycle with another person, while you try to understand at what point you stopped being the hero and became the villain. This type of woman is destructive because she doesn't seem to be. She hides behind compassion. And society reinforces this. We are conditioned to protect those who suffer, to understand those who carry trauma. But nobody tells you that there are traumas that become weapons. There are pains that, if left unhealed, become justifications for hurting others. And here's the hardest part. She's not always fully aware of what she's doing. She truly believes she's the victim, that she's being wronged, that nobody understands her. And it's this conviction that makes everything more dangerous, because she can destroy your confidence, your sanity, your peace, and still come out of the story as the injured party. The only way to protect yourself from this archetype is with emotional clarity. You need to learn to identify the difference between genuine vulnerability and emotional manipulation, between fragility that seeks growth and fragility that seeks control. And above all, you need the courage to walk away. Because the more you try to heal someone who doesn't want to be healed, the sicker you become. This woman doesn't want a partner. She wants a therapist. And when you start to heal, she loses control. Because she doesn't know how to love without chaos. Because stability bores her. Because drama validates her. And as contradictory as it may seem, the overly mature man who offers balance and security represents the exact opposite of the emotional adrenaline she calls love. And so, you need to make a choice. Either you become the emotional firefighter of this relationship, putting out fires she herself starts, or you recognize that you can't save someone who still profits from her own pain. The perfect victim is seductive. She makes you feel special, but in the end, she doesn't choose you. She uses you. And when you stop fulfilling her emotional needs, you become dispensable. And worse, guilty. Perhaps the hardest lesson from this profile is that not every woman who claims to be wounded wants healing. Some just want an audience. And the price you pay for watching is your own dignity. And if this woman destroys you with tears, the next one might do the same with smiles. Because now, we enter the most disguised territory of all. The woman who never cheats, but never shuts off her options. She never cheats. But she's never alone. You might be the only one she sleeps with, but you're far from the only one she plays games with. Because for her, exclusivity is physical, but her mind, her feed, and her eyes remain available. And the most treacherous part? This isn't an accident. It's a lifestyle, a carefully constructed system to ensure attention is never lacking. And attention for her is more valuable than fidelity. You see her online every day. Selfies with indirect phrases, stories with captions that seem to scream, "Look at me." Active inbox, constant notifications, a collection of followers orbiting around her like hungry satellites. She doesn't reject them, she keeps them close. Not out of desire, but for emotional security. Because the idea of not being noticed terrifies her more than loneliness. The problem is that to maintain this constant flow of validation, she needs to flirt with the thin line between freedom and betrayal. In the beginning, she seems fun, connected, sociable. You're charmed by her lightness, her energy. She seems open, modern, uncomplicated. But little by little, you begin to realize there's something insatiable there, an emotional void that nothing completely fills. And then you realize, no matter how much you give, she always needs more. Not more of you, more stimulation. This woman is trapped in an addictive cycle. Each new like, each new follower, each ambiguous message feeds a part of her ego that has lost its bearings. She needs to be desired to feel she still has value. But the paradox is cruel. The more desired she feels, the less capable she becomes of creating real bonds, because she begins to believe that everyone is replaceable, and that, if something goes wrong, there's an invisible queue of suitors waiting their turn. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han, when speaking about performance capitalism, describes a society where everyone exposes themselves all the time in search of constant self-affirmation. In this logic, even intimacy becomes a spectacle. And that's exactly what this woman does with affection. She turns the relationship into a stage and the partner into a spectator. If he admires her, great. If he doesn't applaud her enough, she'll look for an audience elsewhere. And if that means starting a conversation with an ex, replying to a DM with a giggle, or having double conversations, she'll do it. Because she's not cheating, she's just keeping options. Right? Wrong. Emotional infidelity is quieter than physical infidelity, but infinitely more corrosive, because it undermines the foundation of the bond, real presence. Her mind isn't with you, it's on the screen. It's behind the scenes of conversations you'll never see. And that creates a distance that no amount of physical affection can bridge. You feel like you're always competing with an invisible audience, and that competition is unfair. Because she has an emotional arsenal to make you seem insecure every time she questions you. Are you jealous of my friends? Can't I even post anymore? Do you want to control me now? She masterfully inverts the narrative. She makes you seem possessive for wanting emotional exclusivity. And the most perverse part, she portrays herself as a victim. Because for her, any attempt to confront this pattern is interpreted as an attempt to silence who she is. But what she doesn't understand, or pretends not to understand, is that there are limits between being social and being available, between being admired and being too accessible. A relationship with this type of woman becomes a constant feeling of being second best. You are present, but it's never enough. The phone is never face down. The response to your affection comes with a delay. The compliments she seeks aren't yours, they come from outside. And when you try to talk about it, she activates her defensive mode. And then, you start to doubt yourself. But the truth is, a truly strong woman doesn't need to be available to everyone. A confident woman doesn't feed on collective desire. A mature woman knows how to differentiate between praise and provocation, admiration and neediness, attention and toxic validation. And you, if you want to maintain your sanity, will need to stop competing with the whole world. You will need to understand that the problem isn't that you aren't enough. It's that she doesn't know what to do with enough when she has it, because she's addicted to scarcity, to tension, to stimulation, and anything too stable bores her, including you. The cruelest part is that sometimes she doesn't even realize the damage she causes, because everything has become normal. Everyone does it. Everyone is on social media. Everyone talks to exes, right? Wrong. What has become common hasn't become healthy. And normalizing emotional micro-betrayals is the first step to destroying any deep connection. In the end, you will have to choose between fighting for someone who is never fully present or reconnecting with yourself. Because while she lives for likes, you live for doubts. While she seeks exposure, you crave connection. And no relationship survives when one person is physically present and the other lives in a digital shadow. The attention-seeking woman doesn't betray you in the classic way. She does worse. She turns you into just another number in her emotional feed. And if you accept that, you've already lost. That's why, more than recognizing the signs, you need to master the language of attraction. Not the superficial language of ready-made phrases and generic techniques, but the true psychological code that governs human desire. What creates fascination? What hypnotizes? What makes you a man impossible to ignore and impossible to betray? Because the man who masters desire doesn't beg for fidelity. He inspires fidelity. He doesn't demand presence. He becomes magnetic to the point of making absence unthinkable. But this is only possible when you stop playing defensively and start operating with strategy, clarity, and presence. That's exactly why we created the most direct, dense, and transformative audiobook on the power of male attraction. The Forbidden Manual, How to Trigger Desire in 60 Seconds. This is not just another motivational piece. It's not a collection of impactful phrases. It's a code of war, an engineering of influence that will show you how to awaken real desire in any woman in the first 60 seconds of contact. It doesn't matter if you're shy, if you've been rejected, or if you're stuck in relationship cycles where you always lose. What you'll learn here is what you've never been taught. How to activate the feminine instinct of curiosity and emotional submission. How to become irresistible without having to pretend to be someone you're not. How to neutralize manipulative women before they manipulate you. This manual is straight to the point. No beating around the bush. Every minute of the audiobook is surgical. It was designed for you to listen, apply, and see immediate results. And why is it forbidden? Because this type of knowledge is not in the system's interest. It's not in the interest of those who profit from your insecurity, your weakness, your emotional ignorance. But now, it's accessible, if you're ready. If you've made it to the end of this video, it means you're no longer a spectator. You're ready to turn the key. But I need to warn you, this manual is not for the curious. It's for those who have the courage to master their own worth, from becoming the threat in the game and no longer the victim. Click the button now, listen to the audiobook, and discover what happens when you stop chasing and start being the magnet. The man who doesn't beg for attention receives it without asking. The man who doesn't demand loyalty is remembered even when he's not present. And the man who understands desire will never again be betrayed by illusion.